Good evening, everyone. I hope you all are doing well. Good evening. Thank you so much for joining us, either in person or for those joining through our live stream. It's a pleasure to host you here at CSIS. My name is Hedi Ali, and I'm the Director of the Diversity and Leadership in International Affairs Project at the Center for Strategic and International Studies. Our program is the hub for all diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts at CSIS. Since the program's inception in 2017, the program has been dedicated to elevating diverse voices and perspectives to lead to more ideas, more innovation, and more robust policy solutions. We strive to be a thought leader within the DI and national security space. It is my absolute honor to host this event in partnership with the Diversity in National Security Network. This is our second year working together to highlight diverse voices in foreign affairs and national security. Given CSIS's commitment to DI and DNSN's goals of spotlighting diverse leaders, the collaboration simply made sense. As a leading national security and defense think tank, we are proud to leverage our platform and reach to recognize these distinguished individuals. I want to mention a few people by name who have been instrumental in making tonight happen. Huge thanks to Asha Castleberry-Hernandez, and Rob Alexander, my counterparts at DNSN, for their partnership on this critical initiative. I also want to thank some folks from the CSIS end. Naz Suba, Stephen Oriental, Sarah Fattori, Michael McKenna, Carlos Baena, Danesh Mahtani, Dwayne Gladden, Theo Mitchell, our external relations team, conferencing team, and the AV teams who have been doing all the prep work behind the scenes to make today possible. And of course, thank you. Thank you. And of course, we would not be here without the steadfast leadership of Nicole Andal, the Senior Vice President of People and Culture at CSIS. Under Nicole's direction, we released our first ever center-wide strategic plan that guides our center's DI priorities. Prior to CSIS, Nicole was senior counsel with Tourist Law. She has served in senior roles at international aerospace and defense companies such as Airbus. Nicole, it is my pleasure to welcome you to the podium and ask you to share some words with our esteemed group. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Hadil, and thank you for all the hard work you've done to make this event possible. Hello, friends and colleagues, and it's such a great honor to welcome all of you to CSIS. And let me just piggyback on all the acknowledgments for everyone who worked hard to make this event a success today. I'm exceptionally pleased to congratulate this year's network honorees. You are a remarkable group of professionals from every sector of national security and international relations, leaders, scholars, journalists, and at least a couple of lawyers. But though you come from a wide variety of backgrounds, education, and life experiences, there is one thing you all have in common, and that's your bravery. Now let me explain what that means, because bravery can mean a lot of things to a lot of people. None of you would be here if you had not, at some pivotal point in your life, decided to put your fear aside and just put yourself out there, to beat a path, to write and rewrite your first resume until you landed that first job, to know you would be putting yourself in a room or an office or an entire institution where you would be the only person who looked like you or had your kind of name or your identity, and that you would be both highly visible and invisible at the same time. I want you to take time to reflect on those times when you were ready to take on a major role or an overseas assignment, or even start a new area of study, and somebody asked you, "Are you sure you want to do that?" I remember being over the moon about the opportunity to study law in Donetsk, Ukraine. Now, this was back in 2000, so it was a little bit better then. And good, well-meaning friends tried to talk me out of going. They'd probably never seen a black woman before, they said. I'd be the only one in the entire city. Oh, and of course, racism. Not like that doesn't exist everywhere. Had I listened to them or succumbed to my own fears, I would have missed out on what turned out to be one of the most fulfilling and wonderful experiences of my life so far. And there were times where you took a chance. You put yourself out there and maybe things didn't quite go so well. I have a list of those I keep in my pocket of my brain. I label them open in case of emergency, should I find myself in a similar situation, which I have. And I'm sure you all have a few of those too. But you got up, treated your wounds, and kept going. That's what I mean by bravery. So never forget what you got here. The path may have been different for each of you, but we all had boulders to push uphill, landmines to dodge, castle walls to climb. There were setbacks, insurmountable challenges, but you're here, and I see you, and we see you. So stay brave. With that, I'd like to introduce one of the bravest women I know, Asha Castleberry-Hernandez. Asha is a distinguished national security expert, U.S. Army veteran, founder of DINSN. I'm not done, wait. In 2001, Asha joined the Department of State as a senior advisor, working strategic competition in the Middle East region. She's also a major in the United States Army Reserves and a university professor, having taught international relations and security studies at GW, Fordham, and Baruch College. Asha holds a BA in political science from Hampton. We'll discuss which HU was first later. A master's in international affairs from Columbia, and studied in Shanghai and at the University of Oxford, New College. Asha, so good to see you here. Welcome to the stage.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, the real HU is Hampton, right? Well, HBCU joke. Good evening, everyone. Good evening. I am so excited to be here with the new CSIS-DINSN Honoree list, or a group of people that are absolutely wonderful and talented in national security and foreign affairs. We are in this lovely place at CSIS headquarters, and I will tell you something, last year we were purely virtual. So this is such a treat to be here in person. Right, safety member? So just before we go into what DINSN is all about, background information, I just want to thank first CSIS for this wonderful opportunity for allowing us to host us here, and especially Nicole, Hadil, and your wonderful staff and the CSIS leadership for supporting this wonderful partnership. I also want to thank DINSN staff and leadership. We have Robert Alexander, who could not make it, unfortunately, excellent executive director, as well as Sean Clymer, and also Gilberto Washington, who has been a wonderful director of digital operations. So, with that being said, oh, yes, that's not for myself. Yes. So, what is DINSN all about? Well, I will tell you, we were founded in 2017, and the purpose of DINSN is to empower national security, foreign affairs professionals like you, but mainly from underrepresented groups, underrepresented communities, and more specifically, those that come from communities of color, veterans, members of the LGBTQ, and members of the disability community. The purpose of why we focus on these different type of underrepresented groups, because we've noticed that in the national security realm there was a problem or a struggle into recruiting diversity and retaining diversity. So we've been operational since 2017. And since then, we have been an excellent resource and has also been able to launch a couple of projects. One thing we were very active in working on last year's policy panel events, where we worked very closely, such as the White House National Security Council, such as on topics on the Indo-Pacific, China, as well as global partnerships. We're also a great network. We offer networking opportunities. We love sending out a lot of opportunities when it comes to job alerts as well. So yes, so we are a very active, somewhat young, but a wonderful nonprofit. And a distinguished one because it's led by a diverse group of wonderful professionals. What I want to add too is that not only we're diverse in terms of our identity, but also our backgrounds. Many of you come from the public or private sector, and then also when it comes to your expertise, ranging from cybersecurity experts to, military operations to diplomacy. We have such a wide range of experts as part of our network. Also, our focus is mainly on mid-career to senior professionals, where we want to be able to provide a resource to them. Why is that? Again, looking at diversity in national security foreign affairs, we have noticed that when it comes to retaining, the one group that tends to fall out over time is between mid-career to senior. We want to see more of you guys stay within and grow into the system. Pursue the career that you always wanted to pursue. So we're here again to be a resource. So if you have any questions, it does not stop here. Please come and speak to me about Diversity and National Security Network. Again, we're here to empower you, to provide resource as much as possible to support you in your career endeavors. So I'm so excited again to meet the 2022 CSIS-DINSN top 50 leaders. And again, leaders, that's what we need to make sure that we stay in within the network so you can inspire those to also continue to join the national security realm. Thank you. Now I'd like to call up Claridith Laundrie, as well as Terrell J. Starr and Ali Wine to start our panel.
Yes. All right. Can you all hear me okay? All right. How's everyone doing this evening? All right, this is going to be interactive. We're national security. We don't get to talk much. So we're going to change that a little bit tonight. But as the incredible founder of Diversity and National Security Network, Asha Castleberry Hernandez, mentioned, my name is Claridith Laundrie. I'm excited to be here this evening with all of you as not only an honoree, but to have the opportunity to interact and to interview and really just have a conversation. I'm not doing an interview, you're used to that. We're going to have a conversation about just the state of national security from your perspectives, your background, and really what you see for the future of national security, because one of the things that we all know we have to do is not only talk about what's happening or what contributed to the state of affairs as we know it, but it also has to do with what we predict what will happen in the future, and really weighing the risk on what are certain environmental factors, just really being predictive in our analysis. And that doesn't leave no matter where we are, whatever you're a leader wherever you are, right? So we have to make sure that we're including all of the things that we've learned along the way, and kind of saying what our organization and what our fields really need, and what are the challenges that are going to impede that we as leaders are responsible for ensuring that we identify and mitigate. So I'm going to do a preliminary introduction, but I really want to turn it over to Terrell and Ali to tell you a bit more about themselves. But to start, Ali Wine is a senior analyst with Eurasia's Group's Global Macro Geopolitics Practice. He is a David Rockefeller Fellow with the Trilateral Commission, a term member of the Council on Foreign Relations, a security fellow with the Truman National Security Project, and a U.S. Army mad scientist. We'll have to hear more about that, Ali. He also serves on foreign policy for America's Board of Directors. He is the author of America's Great Power Opportunity, Revitalizing U.S. Foreign Policy to Meet the Challenges of Strategic Competition, which The Spectator named one of its 2022 books of the year. Let's give that up for Ali. All right, and immediately to my left, your right, we are joined by Terrell Jermaine Starr. We had to get the full name there, middle name as well. Okay. He is a foreign affairs journalist and is the founder and host of Black Diplomats podcast. His work includes reporting on the Russian invasion of Ukraine, writing about nuclear weapons, nonproliferation, and the intersection of race and global politics. His upcoming projects include a 5-part series on the history of Iranian-U.S. relations and an 8-part series on Black refugees who fled the Russian invasion of Ukraine. If you were watching any of his coverage, I mean, it was quite amazing. Let's just give it up for Terrell, because that took a lot of investment of time, and the way that you were able to really focus on the discriminatory practices against people of color, against Black people across the African diaspora in a place such as Russia and in Ukraine really gives an idea about how some are treated and marginalized groups continue to be treated beyond our boundaries, our domestic boundaries. So I know I've read what at least you all say is your bio, but I know there's much more to how you got here. So Ali, I'd love to start with you and just tell us a little bit more about yourself, what got you into this space. Maybe your story will resonate with someone else.
Is this on? Can people hear me? Okay, great. Well, first of all, Claritas, Terrell, what an honor I think especially in the COVID era, we're used to sort of admiring people from afar, online, digitally, but to actually get to meet them in person is really extraordinary. So thank you for the generous introduction. What an honor and privilege to be with both of you to share some thoughts. I have to be candid. I didn't think that I would be in the national security reform policy space. I've shared this story I know I've shared this story with Asha, and I imagine I've shared some version of this story with a number of you in the audience this evening. Growing up, and I don't say this, I say this actually with a certain measure of embarrassment, up until 9/11, which happened my junior year of high school, I had really no interest in national security or foreign policy at all. I hated reading, I hated writing, I was a math person. Thankfully my sister, she's a couple of years older, she was a very precocious reader and writer, so she dragged me kicking and screaming through my English classes and my writing classes. But I think that looking back, so I came of age in the 90s, and looking back, I think that subconsciously I had internalized a belief that American preeminence was just a given. So my parents, I was born in the United States, but my parents are immigrants, much worldlier than I'll ever be. And when I was growing up, they would always exhort me, Ali, please read a book, read a newspaper, there's a world beyond the United States. And I think that looking back, this was before 9/11, and so I said, America, as the expression goes, it's surrounded by ocean, it's surrounded by friends and fish. We're safe, we're number one, and that was kind of the political milieu in which I grew up. And so I think that my insularity in retrospect, I think it was kind of a luxury to almost believe that we're kind of this oasis of stability and safety in the world. 9/11 happens, my junior year of high school, and it was a real wake-up call. Not only a wake-up call that something tragic and profound and searing had happened in world affairs, but it was also a real wake-up call about how parochial I had been, how insular I had been. That was my junior year of high school, and then my senior year of high school, we were debating whether or not to intervene in Iraq, and that debate went over my head. And so I ended up taking a gap year between high school and college because I said, I think it really behooves me to learn a little bit about the rest of the world, to educate myself. And so I wrote a letter to the Dean of Admissions saying, would you be open to my taking a gap year? I don't have some detailed blueprint for what I want to do. I just have this abstract goal of becoming worldlier. She said, great, sounds good, keep me apprised of what you're doing. And so I set about, during that gap year, trying to read whatever I could to just educate myself a little bit. And I ended up stumbling on a book which proved to be really transformative, I should say. It was a book published in 2002 called The Paradox of American Power by the then Dean of the Harvard Kennedy School, Joseph Nye. And what struck me about the book then, and what continues to strike me about the book now, is it's very sophisticated, but it's also very accessible, so that even somebody such as myself, who really had no immersion in international affairs at all, I wasn't able to get everything, but I was able to get sort of the main ideas from the book. So, and now this is sort of a story about character and mentorship, and how the people I really admire the most. Yes, I admire individuals for their intellect, their resumes, but I really admire people above all for the character they exhibit. So Dean Nye, as you can imagine, at the time he was Dean Nye, you can imagine he's a little bit busy. He's the dean of the Kennedy School. He gets a lot of messages in his inbox. So here is this rando high school graduate. I just read his book, and I learned a lot from it. I really enjoyed it, so I sent him an email. And I said, Dear Dean Nye, I've just read your book. I really enjoyed it. I learned so much from it. It would be an honor to meet you. It was just kind of an overzealous email, but I was just really, really excited about the book, and I was hoping that he might read it. I hit send on the email, and then I remember reading the email that I just sent, and I said, gosh, it probably sounds a little bit too forthcoming, too eager. But I said, look, my email is probably not even going to make it to his, forget about his inbox, it's probably not even going to make it to his spam filter, so I didn't pay it any mind. I come back a few hours later, and I see a message in my inbox from Joseph Nye. I said, okay. And he said, Dear Ali, thank you for the kind words about my book. If you ever find yourself in Boston, let's get together. I think I booked my flight to Boston that night. I was pumped. I didn't know what I was going to talk with him about, but I was excited. I booked my tickets. And I remember going to meet with him, and I'm thinking, and I was kind of shaking before I went in. I mean, he's such a towering figure. I said, what am I going to discuss? What am I going to talk with him about? What am I going to say? But he immediately put me at ease. So we sit down. He says, what did you like about the book? Where are you from? Where are your parents from? Tell me about your upbringing. And at the end of the conversation, he says, well, it sounds like you have this nascent interest in political science. I'd encourage you to develop it. I'm here as a resource. Keep in touch. And as they say, the rest is history. So really, I didn't think that I was going to end up in this space, but to have someone who validates you, who validates your interest and says, go for it, I never looked back. So I'm very, very grateful to him and many other mentors along the way.
Sharing that story. I love how you hit on the importance of mentorship in the space, and sometimes in a way where it's almost serendipitous. You also hit on something else that I want you all to hold on to. He talked about exposure. Not necessarily having a particular background in a space, but the opportunity to even explore that. So we might want to hold on to that, because later on we'll have another question about some of the impediments to diverse and marginalized people being in that space. And let's hold on to that idea of exposure. But Terrell, before we get into that, we want to hear a little bit more about your upbringing, what got you into this space, in your own words.
No, thank you very much, everybody. So I resonate, a lot of things that you said, Ali, resonates with me. So I grew up in Detroit, Michigan, and a lot of people, when they see me and they see Ukraine, the first question is, how did you get there? Obviously, what they really want to say is, how do you, as a black man, how did you get over to Ukraine and be in your own CNN and reporting from war zones? And I tell them that it was, I didn't really want to do any of this at all. So I was born and raised in Detroit, Michigan. I was raised by my grandmother, third grade education. Both my parents were in the military. My mother did 23 years U.S. Army, father did 4. And I grew up in the trap. So people ask me about what was your first introduction into diplomacy. I told them my uncles who sold crack. And so, and that was my life. I literally grew up in the trap. So I understood, so that all the stuff that you see in the Boys in the Hood, that literally happened to me, right? And so I come from this very unconventional space where people would not expect you to come from and have this experience, right? So the genesis of my growth, and I think my understanding of the world, comes from the fact that before I understood the rest of the world, I really did a lot of self-reflection about my own community, right? Because the way that foreign policy works, as far as I'm concerned, is nothing more than an extension of domestic policy. And as I really understood the racist urban planning of Detroit, Michigan, the resistance against black political power, right? You see the ways that some of the negative elements of U.S. foreign policy and how it's really influences the Middle East and Central Asia and the rest of the world. And so one of the best qualities that I have as a foreign policy professional is that I understand my own country. And so when I'm looking across the table and having conversations with my Iranian brothers and sisters, the people from South America, who often tell me that, Americans come to us as if their stuff doesn't stink, and I say, I know. Right, so and that's an icebreaker, so to speak, right? So my experience, and I lean into that experience because a lot of people, especially people of color, we go into these rooms and we don't like to lean into our experiences. And because if we're really being truthful, our experiences inform the way this world lives, because ultimately, as we're crafting policy, we're ultimately creating a better world. But the question is, who is creating the better world for who, right? And so what I do is I take the experience of urban policy, what that means, and talk about ways in which we really can look at our own policy across the world and say, okay, is there some self-reflection that we can do, right? And so one of the, my steps in going into foreign policy, it was, again, all through black people. I went to a historically black school, Philander Smith College in Little Rock, Arkansas. And the way that I think that the village works is, you know, people see something in you. It's kind of like the drug dealers. The drug dealers never let me get a package, right? And trust me, I tried, right? And so they say, well, you're going to be doing something else in this world, and you seem like and so they encourage you. And so that village, there are different elements of that, and it just kind of goes further into your life. And so when I was at Philander, if there was an opportunity to travel abroad, they said, well, hey, Terrell, you look like the type of person that would be willing to get on the plane to go to Senegal or to wherever you do it. And it was fine. And so I went to my first couple of countries were black places. And then my summer before my senior year, I applied for an international volunteer program. And I was accepted into it, and it said Russia. I do not want to go to Russia. Detroit is 90% black, largest black city in the United States. I called my godmother, really was nervous and didn't want to do it. And so what my godmother did was that she told me about all the ways that my life was black. Your mama black, your daddy black, all your teachers are black, I'm black. So she just laid it out that your life is in a constant state of being black, so try something else. And so I ended up going to Russia to volunteer in an orphanage, and then at that point I was accepted into the Peace Corps. I went to the Republic of Georgia. And then I was a Fulbright to Ukraine, and then it goes on from there. But I think the larger point that I'm making is that it's been a culmination of these experiences beyond the fact that I learned Russian and I'm taking Ukrainian language right now, and I write about the technicalities of nuclear weapons. My message to everyone is that I use my platforms to tell people that you are entitled to have an understanding about how this world works because we all live in it. And also I use my experience to help us just really come together to figure out ways that we can live in this world together, right? And so one of the reasons why so many Ukrainians relate to me is that I understand my oppression, and I understand that you don't have to be a person of color to experience oppression. And especially if you understand Russian and you listen to Dmitry Medvedev, who is a deputy head of the Security Council in Russia, he talks about Ukrainians like they're white trash, right? So, but again, I lean into that experience simply to say that I use my podcast, Black Diplomats, and I name it Black Diplomats because I want black people and other people of color to believe that we can be diplomats and we can participate in this conversation. And I bring people who are indigenous voices to the conversation, even people who are in Ukraine, for example, to be a part of these discourses. And closing it out by saying that I use that platform because I think the more we lean into our experiences, the better that we can lean into better solutions to better make this world a better place.
All right, everyone, let's give them a round of applause for that. You all both hit on so many gems, and I think that the power of storytelling really helps everyone just kind of see a picture of not only your upbringing, but what motivates you, what allows you to relate to other people, and hearing it in your own words is so powerful because, again, you never know what, up-and-coming leader that's sitting in the audience with as a brother and sister listening to national security stories, what that really means for what their future could be, right? Maybe they see themselves in you, or something you say may resonate with them. Or a country you mentioned saying, okay, go back home, where is this? What do I need to know about it? Just that spark can influence an entire generation of future diplomats, political leaders, national security professionals. So that's why I really think it's always important to start with your story told in your own way so that we all get a better understanding of someone's why. We talked a little bit earlier, and you started mentioning it, just some of the challenges. I mean, we call them challenges, but let's be real. There are some impediments to getting into this space. There's some lower expectations. A lot of times when you're coming from disenfranchised communities, marginalized communities, and oftentimes you don't necessarily have to come from that environment, and the expectation is already set low. Could you perhaps expound a little bit more on that? And Ali, maybe start with you on what were some of the challenges, if you experienced any, or even witnessed any, observed any, getting into the space where you are now?
Thanks. It's a really important question. I suspect that all of us in different ways have grappled with it. I think that the first obstacle in many ways, and again, I can only speak for myself, it's getting out of my own head. So it's, we all have heard the term imposter syndrome, and I was actually having a conversation with a friend of mine not too long ago, and I said that for the issues that I try to research or I try to think about, I think that my convictions today are probably less settled than they were 5 years ago or 10 years ago. The more you research, the more you learn, the more you study, the more you realize or appreciate how little you actually understand. And so even now, I like to put pen to paper, I like to share my thoughts, but there are many times when I say, well, what if I make a statement that's factually incorrect? What if I make an argument that's critiqued? And so sometimes it's just saying, look, if you don't contribute to the marketplace of ideas, if you're not putting yourself out there, your voice is not heard. And recognizing that there's nothing wrong with being wrong as long as you're learning. There's nothing wrong with making an argument that someone says, hey, I disagree with you, as long as you're open to being challenged, you're open to learning. And so I think that initially when I started putting pen to paper, my thought was, I hope that this argument that I'm making is bulletproof. No argument is bulletproof. There are always going to be critiques. Now my perspective is not making a bulletproof argument. It's just saying, here's my most considered judgment, but tell me why I'm wrong. How could I be wrong? I want to learn. So I think one is just getting out of our own heads and saying, and Terrell, to your point, that each of us is entitled to contribute to that marketplace of ideas. No one has monopoly on wisdom. We each have unique and important perspectives to share. And so as long as you recognize that each of us has a unique perspective to share, we all are entitled to contribute to the marketplace of ideas, I think that we're on a good track.
I love that. Thank you so much, Ali. Just believing in yourself, being open to other ideas, that concept of cognitive diversity, and when you have diverse mindsets and thoughts and contributions to a conversation, innovation comes out of that. So thank you so much. Terrell, same to you. You talked a little bit about it, growing up in Detroit as a Southside Atlanta girl myself. Definitely understand kind of the polarizing and kind of the opposing sides of the worlds that we can come from. So I'd love to hear more about, what those challenges did to maybe drive you a bit more. And then we're going to go right into the next question, which is, how did DINSN help you build the network and really increase your own self-value and net worth to overcome those challenges?
Well, I thank you very much for that question. And I think the route that I've taken is one that's an unconventional one. So I work for myself. So I have a podcast that's self-funded, and people believed in it and have supported me in it. And so I never lacked confidence. That's something I never lacked. But one thing that I did have to overcome was, I'm sorry. Thank you very much. All right, yeah. So one of the things that I've had to overcome was really being okay with the fact that I have a very unconventional and non-traditional way of looking at the world. So I'll give you two direct examples of it. One was when I first started writing about nuclear weapons nonproliferation, I was hired by Gawker after Hulk Hogan sued at the high heaven, whatever, right? So I was the national security reporter. And it was my first time really focusing on national security and covering military. There's a wide range of things you could do. And so in the middle of my learning about my job, I realized that I really enjoyed learning about the mechanics of intercontinental ballistic missiles, right? And so because I like, okay, it's cool, they go into space and how come it takes 20 minutes? I was really fascinated by this, right? And then
This is what we think of in our spare time.
I knew I was really into it, and I was really working, and then I was, okay, what's the THAAD system? And we have this, this mid-course system that really is supposed to intercept your so it was really fascinating to me to learn about the mechanics about how all these things work. And what I learned was that in this journalism community, there are a lot of people who enjoy talking about these weapons of violence, and I just found it to be disgusting. And I tried to figure out why, and because there are a lot of people who was into, again, just give me just a slight second, just for example, the maneuverable hypersonic missiles that are in the, that operate in the atmosphere, whatever, and the engines burning out. Like, I'm into that to the extent, but my whole question was, why do these things exist? And are there ways in which we can have conversations about how we don't have to kill each other, right? And so I started writing articles about, okay, maybe we don't need a triad. Maybe we can, maybe if we have to have the, our whole, maybe we can exist without our intercontinental ballistic missiles and rely on our submarine launched ballistic missiles. Like having these conversations about how you can really cut down on, on our weapons. And I got all this crazy negative reaction. We're not used to this because the guy before you, he would just talk about the mechanics of all this stuff, and he would just talk about how these things work, and he would talk about the treads on the Abrams, tanks and whatever. I'm like, I'm not the white boy named Tyler, and if you like him, you can go talk. You can go find him wherever else job that he went to, right? And so, but ultimately, people started reaching out to me and saying, well, Terrell, thank you. Right? You're the person who gave us another way of looking at the world. And I'll close out that question by saying that when we don't really bring ourselves into these conversations, we're actually doing, or we're not allowed to, the national security field does itself a disservice. Because one of the things about Ukraine in my coverage, when I was there and covering from the ground, there were a lot of people who did not believe that the Ukrainians would be able to hold up. And I always believed that the Ukrainians will fight because the Ukrainians hate them, hate Russians. That's not a lack of technical expertise. That's not a matter of not knowing what the intelligence is. That's not understanding culture. There are just certain things that no matter what the intelligence reports can't tell you all these things. Like you have to be there. You have to have not only the linguistics, the culture behind the linguistics and the language to kind of get people's resistance to fight back. And we lose opportunities to understand how we can engage people if we don't lean into ourselves and weather the storm of being unconventional. Because as Michelle Obama said, when she goes to the table, they're not that smart. Just close it.
Tough group.
Yeah, okay.
She did say it, though. She said a couple of great gems. We
Yeah,
do love
maybe,
Forever First Lady.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I'm hearing a couple of things here. It's a disservice for us not to be in this space. We bring a different perspective. We bring a different experience. We deserve to be, and we are entitled to the opportunities just like any other group. And what I'm hearing is the thread that DINSN gives us that opportunity, not only to be amongst each other and to encourage each other in this space, but it's also encouraging you with the same message. You deserve to be in this space. Your opinion, your perspective, the time that you spent to develop your acumen matters. And we're here to make sure that it's shared across a community that at times doesn't even know how to appreciate it. So we're kind of coming to an end here, but I always like to end with a call to action, some kind of challenge, right? We're not just here to be the recipients of great information, hear wonderful stories, and perhaps see ourselves in each other, but we're also here to take something back so we can go and identify the next leaders who will be in this room next year, who will be on this stage next year, who are on the waiting list, because we have so many applications for DINSN Top 50 that we actually have to have a waiting list, or perhaps tell them next year, or just come and interact. The point of the matter is, we know that there's more than the 50 of us in this room and participating via our live stream. So with that being said, what would, Ali, start with you, what would your call to action be for the folks in this room, for the folks tuning in, when it comes to making sure that more voices, more diverse voices are heard in national security?
Thank you, and I'm so glad that we're ending with this question. One, because I wanted to say, Asha, are you still? She's
here.
She's taking care of business. Okay. Really, I would say I guess kind of a closing call to action is, do as Asha would do. It's really.
Give a round of applause for that one, you all.
And the reason that I say that, and I was actually having this conversation with a few folks before we got started. When I think of Asha, when I think of DINSN, yes, it's public servants, it's journalists, it's folks in the philanthropic space, folks in other communities they have extraordinary resumes, they have extraordinary litanies of accomplishments, but what really, really counts, at least to me, in my register above all else is character. And what Asha does, I don't know how she even finds the time. I sometimes wonder, does Asha have a clone, 2 clones? She does so much beyond her day job, beyond DINSN. What really, I think, sets Asha apart is the relentlessness with which she lifts up others. Asha is dedicated to spotlighting others, to lifting others up, and to saying, here is someone you should connect with. Here is someone whose voice you should be hearing. Here is someone whose work you should be engaging with. It's extraordinary. And I think that, we all, I think whether it's in Washington, D.C., or New York, or Los Angeles, but in kind of, the cities where you have a lot of ambitious personalities, there's sometimes this fear that when we interact with others, there's a sense, is it going to be a transactional relationship? Are people just looking to engage with me to get somewhere else? But what Asha does is she says, no, I'm here I'm not engaging with you because I'm looking to get something, I just want to lift you up. That's really, really rare.
Absolutely.
And so, just to close, so my call to action really, again, just, be like Asha, do as Asha does, is lift others up. If you sense that somebody is a little bit reluctant about, contributing to the marketplace of ideas, say to that person, your voice matters. If you sense that there is somebody who says, maybe national security or foreign policy isn't for me, say, why isn't it for you? Push people out of their comfort zones. Tell them that their voices matter. Tell them that their insights matter. Tell them that their work matters. And the more that we do to spotlight others around us, the more we do to lift up the work of others, the more we are going to build this community. And I'll just say, it's, you mentioned, Asha, that DINSN was started in 2017. It's really extraordinary to see that just in a few short years, it has become an integral component of our nation's foreign policy ecosystem. Yes. And that when I think of, at every level of government, federal government, state government, local government, DINSN folks are abundantly represented. In the journalistic space, DINSN folks are abundantly represented. In the NGO space, in the philanthropic space. So this is what it's about. It's building community, it's lifting others up, and that's really, if you sense that there are individuals around you who have great ideas to share and they just need a little bit of a nudge to put themselves out there and contribute to this type of community, be that person to them.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Right, so again, thank you, Asha. I came down here just for you and everybody, and y'all, I like y'all too, right? but really, I think it's important to really highlight the work of this organization because the first time that I've been on the White House grounds was because Asha helped, convene a meeting with national security people, and I was able to really brief White House officials about Ukraine. And the best thing about it is that it's not, I know that we are beyond the point where we're proving that black people can do this work. It's just about, and people of color, it's about really just making sure that we support each other and just be in a position where we can really show our expertise, right? And that's the beauty of this organization work that Asha does. We all have our own gifts that we're good with, right? And many of us are good with Iranian issues in Iran or South America, whatever the case may be, and we're good at that, and we have that particular value. And so it's really about going beyond this notion of people of color are in this field and doing this. We know that, right? It's more now about, okay, this is what you're good at, and this is your strength. Right? And just leaning into ourselves and then leaning into our gifts and our talents. Mm-hmm. And that's the power of what this organization does. And so now we're all together. We're this big village, and it's incumbent upon us to lift each other up and support one another so that we can come together and make this world the place that we know that we can make it. And together we can do that. And so that call to action is really about leaning into ourselves, but also leaning on one another, right? And keeping each other up, and being a pillar for our own success and being a pillar for the world, because one of those pillars is definitely here. And thanking Asha for helping to us, get that foundation going.
All right. Let's give him a round of applause, everyone. So as we bring this to a close, I want to thank Ali and Terrell for an incredible conversation. I feel like I know you even more, even better. We'll talk a little bit during the reception. I think there's non-alcoholic beverages, wink, wink. But I will also join in because I know it may be a little bit of an anomaly for a moderator to try to offer some advice in this space, but I too am a national security practitioner focused on the Caucasus region, Mediterranean, as well as the Baltics, and spent my life in that space for over 10 years serving in the United States Army as an intelligence officer and counterintelligence agent. I would say that one of the things that, kind of piggybacking off of what Terrell said, is that not only should we lean on one another, but recognize that when the resources are scarce, or the element of fear, which is nothing more than false evidence appearing real, is implemented and really placed upon us in an oppressive way where we think we can't reach out to one another, we can't lean on each other for resources, because we're in one particular field, we can't talk to someone in another field. We are in different areas of intel, foreign affairs, international affairs, policy, media, communications. We all have something that we can leverage and that we can help one another, and quite frankly, we can't afford not to. Our strength and our power is in our shared resources, and while others think that actually puts us at a disadvantage, it's something that actually puts us ahead when we work together. We can have a comprehensive, collective conversation about national security with all of the parties involved because of our diverse experiences and our diverse acumen. That's our power in this room and definitely outside of it. Thank you all so much. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Thank you. Real pleasure. Real. Really, you're just an incredible job. Really, really incredible.
All right. That was awesome. Thank you for the wonderful panel. My goodness. Great. So now we will transition to our next event. We're so excited to have our keynote speaker here, Ms. Symone Sanders-Townsend. Woo! So let me just read her quick bio. Symone D. Sanders-Townsend not only is part of our wonderful honoree list, she's an author, a seasoned Democratic strategist, and a host of Symone on MSNBC and MSNBC on Peacock. She's also the former senior advisor and chief spokesperson to the Vice President of the United States. Symone rose to prominence in 2016 at the National Press Secretary for U.S. Senator Bernie Sanders' then presidential campaign. At age 25, she became the youngest presidential press secretary on record and was named to Rolling Stones magazine's list of 16 young Americans shaping the 2016 election. At 29, she published her first book, No, You Shut Up, Speaking Truth to Power, and Reclaiming America, and served as a senior advisor to President Joe Biden's 2020 presidential campaign. So, without further ado, please, Ms. Symone Sanders-Townsend, come up.
Thank you all so very much. I'm very excited to be here. Oh, excuse me. The scarf got me. I'm very excited to be here. Thank you to CSIS, and congratulations to all of the honorees. I did not work in foreign policy. You all just had a very rousing conversation, I know, because Terrell was on the panel, okay, so I know what it was. I don't come from working in foreign policy. But in all of the political work that I have done and my opportunity to serve at the White House, to serve on the Vice President's team, and now in what I do at MSNBC with my show, Symone, 4 p.m. Saturdays and Sundays, Eastern, MSNBC, The foreign policy conversation is directly connected to what happens domestically and vice versa. We always talk about we live in an interconnected world, right? Some people want to use the term globalization, whatever floats your boat. It's all connected. What is happening in Memphis, Tennessee matters to Washington, D.C. It matters to Kyiv, Ukraine. It matters to London. It matters. What is happening around the globe matters to what is happening here domestically and vice versa. And throughout my career, I have seen when there are various people from various backgrounds, various socioeconomic statuses who bring various vantage points to the table, the conversation is more robust. The solutions look different. But when we look at foreign policy, our foreign policy apparatus, if you will, it's just a little less diverse as all these other places. And I will never forget, I had the opportunity when I was at the White House to travel with the Vice President on all of her international trips. When I got to the White House, I realized that y'all professionals refer to them as OCONUSes, okay? So I've been on a number of OCONUSes, if you will. And it struck me that when we would go places that were countries who were made up of majority people of color, the U.S. American diplomats who would meet us in the country were white. They were white men. Oftentimes, we would have meetings in the White House in preparation for bilateral meetings, whether it's with President Yamate of Guatemala or the president of Ghana. And the experts, oftentimes, who come in the room would be white. And I did not understand why, in the year of our Lord, 2021 at the time, why was the work not more representative of the people with whom we are trying to reach and serve? And I think, frankly, to the benefit of the American people, the Vice President of the United States of America asked that very same question. And there has been work that has been done to ensure that the voices of people from various socioeconomic backgrounds, various vantage points, little bald black girls from Omaha, Nebraska, are people who are at the table to help create these solutions. And so when I started my show on MSNBC, I thought it was very important to, one, talk about foreign policy, what is happening, because as I just discussed, what is happening here is directly connected to what is happening globally and vice versa, and to have those discussions with just not white men. And nothing wrong with white men, but these are not the only individuals that have a perspective that have worked as diplomats for this country or that understand the complex conversations that are happening as it relates to foreign policy. And I think when Desiree Cormier-Smith, who is the first, she's the equity ambassador, if you will, for the United States of America, when she came on the show, I vividly remember the conversation that a number of people had around it in preparations for her first appearance. And they talked about asking her about Brittany Griner and what about equity this and what about equity that. I'm like, yes, we could talk about equity, but Desiree has worked she has worked at the highest levels of the State Department. Let's ask her about Ukraine. Let's ask her about the conversations that Secretary Blinken has been having. Let's ask her about this because there's range. And I really think that it is very, very, very important for people here at home domestically to understand that the diplomatic community, if you will, there are people who reflect various socioeconomic backgrounds, diverse backgrounds, who are doing the work at the highest levels, and their presence at the table makes a difference. It truly, truly makes a difference. And I think that the work that this group has done to raise those voices, to have critical conversations, to push the boundaries is what is needed so that, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 15 years from now, when folks are traveling across the world to meet with diplomatic leaders, people who are representing the United States government in various countries, and the majority of people of color, they are met with people that truly reflect the diversity of the folks that they claim to be serving. And I think that is the challenge. That is the thing, if you will, I think we all need to do better about. I talk about being a radical revolutionary often, and I think our diplomatic, our foreign policy community, we need some more radical revolutionaries, if you will. And when I say radical revolutionaries, I am not talking about people picking up their signs going to the die-in. No, 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 no. It's not your radical revolutionary contribution in this space. A radical revolutionary contribution is to speak up, take risks, to stand in the gap, to take stock of who is not at the table, of what story is not being told, and be willing to tell it. That's why I appreciate the work that Terrell's done. I did not know when I first met this gentleman, when I worked for Senator Sanders on his presidential campaign in 2015, that he was an expert on Russia. I had no idea. It was not something that I could fathom. But to watch him reporting on what was happening and continues to happen in Ukraine with the war that Russia has waged on a sovereign nation, I think it's very important to tell stories that other people are not telling. It was from Terrell that I first learned that Black people in Ukraine were being denied access to the transportation of leaving the country. Mainstream media wasn't telling that story first. It wasn't a vantage point that they thought about, but it's an important story to be told. And so if there's a challenge that I have for the folks in this room, the people on the Zoom, and as we go back to our very fancy spaces and places and our very highfalutin places that we all work, it's to think about the people who are not at the table. The stories that are not being told. How can we stand in the gap for those folks? How do we bring those individuals in? How can we do some things that have not been done before to push the boundaries as it relates to how we discuss and engage in our foreign policy work here and abroad? I think it's very important. We have to challenge ourselves. You know, I think one of the greatest lessons that I've learned is that we only know what we think we know, and the reality is far too many of us don't really know too much. We have to challenge ourselves to get out of our boxes, and that's why I'm so grateful to now be a part of this community, to continue to help elevate and tell the stories and facilitate conversations that other people are not having. Because all of these issues that are happening, they affect the people right here at home, and Americans, particularly Americans, people in this country who, you know, they aren't political professionals, who don't do this work every day, who are not knee-deep in the foreign policy world, if you will. They deserve to have a vantage point and an understanding of why we continue to cover what is happening in Ukraine, about why the tanks are critical and important. They deserve to have a vantage point and understanding of what is happening in Ethiopia. And it is the duty of folks like myself to tell those stories and invite people like you all to come on and tell them. So thank you so much. Thank you for this honor. And I just challenge you to think about doing the things that have not been done before. How are you being a radical revolutionary in your everyday space and place? If you're comfortable, you are not doing the work. Get uncomfortable. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Symone. And because of those wonderful remarks, we have something really awesome to give you. Okay, first, that's your certificate. Thank you. 2022. Yes, and a wonderful gift.
Thank you all very much.
Yes,
Thank you.
yes.
Thank you, thank you.
I'm sorry, yes, yes. Great. So now we will transition to our induction ceremony. Are we doing a photo now? No, okay. So, okay, sorry. We'll now transition to our induction ceremony. So I would like to call on Miss Claridith Landry, and then Alexandria Molina. Oh, afterwards, yes, sorry. Claridith. Sorry about that.
All right, everyone, let's give Symone Sanders-Townsend another round of applause. That was an incredible keynote. Again, another example of how our worlds really do intersect one another and how we lift and elevate, and very grateful for the work that she's done to bring our diverse stories, narratives, and experiences to tell the stories of what we're doing to her platform. So we're going to get into this inductee ceremony, the formal part. So we're going to ask that as your name is called, you simply stand. Please feel free to cheer your colleagues on. We're not like high school, college. You don't have to wait until the end. All right? We are going to celebrate. All right? So our first honoree is Kambis Abdul Rahimi. Tyler Adamson. Hadil Ali. Nega Anga. Kedan Araya. Sebastian Bay. Nazneen Barma. Yeshaya Berry. Spencer Boyer. Alexius Butler. Earl A. Carr Jr. Caroline Chang. William Connor. MJ Crawford. Sabine Danani. Marie France. Yusra Fazili. Ayla Francis. Geisha Gonzalez. Hermes Guyon. Shiana Gunasikara. Naira Hawk. Devon Hill. Samir Hossein. Amira Jadoun. And Nizar Jamal.
Good evening. Good evening. Welcome. My name is Alexandra Maloney. I am currently the president of Black Professionals in International Affairs. I'm a 2021, hey, we're here in the building, a 2021 CSIS-DINSN honoree. That's a heck of an acronym, but I'm honored to be able to say that. And I will be announcing the remainder of the honorees today. So congratulations to each of you. All right, I'll begin with Claredith E. Landry. Anthony Tony Johnson. Brian Mateo. Lydia Nylander. Victoria Parsons. Alka Patel. Desiree Pipkins. Maria Rose Rubli. Aljean Sajeri. Valley San Mugaglinam. Jimmy Santos. Terrell J. Starr. Cindy Serrano Roberts. Warren Sutton. Daniel Tapia. Samantha Turner. Shanice Underwood. Pranay Vadi. Jennifer Walters. Simone Williams. Felicia Wilson Young. Ollie Wine. Stephanie Young. And last but not least, Symone Sanders-Townsend. All right, I will now invite Asha Castleberry to the stage for the next portion of the program. Thank you, everyone.
Let's give another round of applause. Yeah, top 50. Okay, so before we proceed to the closing remarks, and then we'll move on with our photo, I just want to acknowledge the wonderful guests that are here. One is Vincent Evans from CBC, chair of the CBC, please. And then we also have Carissa Joy, former White House official. Awesome, awesome. Okay, so, and then also we have the Gria as well. Great. Okay, so now we'll proceed to the closing remarks.
All right, let's do another round of applause for all of our honorees. One last one. Thank you so much to all of you for joining us in person and for those that have been able also to tune in online. Thank you to all of our fantastic speakers, to the CSIS teams again who supported this program. Congratulations again to all of you on this significant accomplishment. Just a few logistical items. Make sure before you head out to walk right outside. You'll see my colleagues who will hand you your certificate, so make sure to take your diploma before heading out. There will also be a reception outside, so please make sure to stay as long as possible to mingle and network with everyone here. Again, thank you so much for joining us here at CSIS. It's been an honor to host you. Hopefully we can host many of you again at the center. And before closing, I know Asha has one more thing before we let you have a nice time in the reception.
Thank you, Hazel. Okay. I am just so thrilled that we have been able to do this in person. This has been such a treat. And because of this event, I would have not been able to do this without these wonderful people that support me from a distance, as well as that are here right now. So I want to recognize 3 people here that have supported me along the way in this journey. One, Hadil Ali. Yes. 2, our amazing Alexandria J. Maloney. Woo! Come. Yes. Thank you. Okay. And then we also have Carissa Joy. Woo! Thank you so much. You have guys been such an amazing group of people that have helped me and support me in this, so thank you. Please, another round of applause. Great.
Now, if this concludes the program, we're going to ask if the honorees can come. I'm just going to go ahead and take the mic one last time. Before we dismiss, we're going to ask if the honorees can join here near the front of the stage so we can take a group photo, please. Thank you very much. Okay.